G'day guys, this is video 2 in relation to my recovery from my disc herniation from L5 S1. This video will be specific to, post-op up until 2 weeks of recovery. I'm currently 4 weeks post-op. I'll add another video later on, but this one specifically is from, day of operation, so coming out in recovery and then leading to 2 weeks post-op. Essentially what my mental and physical status was like, what recovery was like, the process and whatnot. So basically had the operation. It was a late evening. I was extremely nervous about the operation. As I said in the previous video, my herniation is a dual herniation. I was unlucky where I had a herniation at the rear of the disc and a herniation at the front of the disc all at the same time, which is quite uncommon, as was explained to me. The surgeon that I used was quite optimistic in trying to clear the herniation at the front, still using obviously the entry point at the rear, which is extremely difficult. But essentially, with my permission, he said, "Look, I really want to give this a good attempt, and it may save the requirement in the future of a second operation, because typically when there's a herniation in the front, they go through the front, just beside the belly button. They make an incision there, and at times it's usually 2 separate operations. So in this case, obviously, I said to him, "Yeah, like let's try. Definitely, let's try. I feel confident," and he was. So he attempted to clean both areas via the rear, and the incision in my back. So we did that in the evening. I was very, very nervous about the whole procedure. As I touched on previously in the previous video, I had spent quite a long time in hospital prior, going around in circles, feeling like I was going nowhere. So at that stage, I was falling into, a stage of depression, and a lot of anxiety, and obviously a lot of pain and suffering. Moving forward, did the operation, came back to my room. I remember obviously feeling, initially you don't feel much, you feel quite drowsy, waking up in recoveries. Some people like the sensation of being put to sleep. I think I was just really anxious about the operation itself so much that I wasn't really able to relax prior to going, being put to sleep. I remember asking so many questions and, just making the nurse and assisting nurse and the anaesthetist promise me you'll do your best, you'll do your best on me. And, obviously they laughed and reassured me that, they're not going to treat me no different. It's just that they're going to do their job. They're going to always do the best they can. But I remember seeking that recognition from them, sort of saying, like, reassure me that reassurance from them, to reassure me that everything will be okay. I'm not going to come out of this, with severe long-term injuries, or they're not going to hit something, or all these kinds of, silly requests. But that's just genuinely how I felt. Woke up in recovery, was obviously a little bit disorientated, but fortunately for me, I didn't get the vomiting or too sick. I was just more drowsy. I remember being in and out of consciousness, sort of thing, really, just falling back asleep and waking up until I got into my room, and that hung around for at least 2 to 3 hours, even after back in my room. And then I remember it slowly wearing off in terms of the drowsiness side of things. I had a sensation in my lower back in terms of not a pain, like a nerve sensation. I had a sensation where I could tell that obviously something had, there was an operation that took place, and I could just feel very tender around that location. Pretty much, I believe I was in hospital for approximately 3 to 4 days post-op before I was discharged. And in that week, nonetheless, in hospital, it was primarily very, very, very minimal movements. Typically, after such operation, they do encourage walking. Some people get up and walk, as much as they physically can, straight after the op. depending on obviously the severity of the herniation and how long they've been suffering, and there's so many factors. But for myself, it was from the surgeon was the instruction was strict bed rest, only get up only sit up to eat, and when assisted to go to the bathroom. So my first week's instruction was essentially lay horizontal, lay flat on your back. For the first week, pretty much 90% of the time, 95% of the time, which I did because obviously I wanted to follow the strict instructions. So that was again that was a very testing time as well, because I was still in pain. I had a lot of nerve pain sensation still, which was really concerning for me, because I had watched so many previous videos and listened to podcasts where people had done the operation, and they're like, "Oh, I had instant reliefs," and it was like I was new again and everything was fine, and I certainly was far from that. I had severe pain still, and I was still taking heavy doses of opioids and morphine to counter the acute pain I was still suffering. But I was reassured by the surgeon and all the assistants and the nurses that actually that was quite common, and don't be deterred, that this is actually all part of the recovery. The nerve had been in compression for quite some time, and on top of that, when they conduct the operation itself, they surgically need to, place a surgical item and push the nerve itself to the side, which actually, compresses it even more, and that enables them to have clearer access and a more direct route to the disc itself. So the operation in itself can cause trauma to the nerve itself, which I believe it probably added to an already pretty angry and distressed nerve. So that took place. The first week, as I said, was horizontal, very painful. I remember if I had to fidget in the bed, it was basically elbows down, and I would use my right leg because my left leg was where the nerve pain was. So I'd essentially dig my right heel into the ground, dig my elbows down, and essentially sort of tripod, and then I'd be able to get a very, very slow, slight shimmy, sort of like just to give a little bit of relief for my back and my butt, just to sort of just give them, if you're laying on a particular limb or area for a long period of time, you gets a little bit uncomfortable. So just those constant little shimmies. I remember even doing those was just like I had to literally psych myself up and say, okay, come on, we're going to do this, and really dig in, really dig deep to just to get little fidgets in the bed. So the first week was very painful still, lots of pain, lots of reoccurring pain. The duration of the pain in the nerve were long. Even after pain relief, it takes sometimes 40 minutes to an hour before it even, the edge would sort of come down, so I could essentially be able to sort of let my leg go and stop compressing it and stop squeezing and stop tensing, so I could sort of kind of relax, you could call it, in the bed. So the first week was absolute agony for me. Did not enjoy it at all. It was approximately sort of 4 days later after the operation, I was discharged. So I followed the same protocol at home. I came home, I made some modifications in the house in relation to, I basically took the cushions off the lounge and I placed the mattress, because that height was easier to access on and off in relation to laying, as opposed to my bed. My bed was just a little bit lower, and it was just a bit too difficult to get down into bed. So I was utilizing that as a temporary sort of bed. Same thing though, laying horizontal most of the time. The only benefit was I was at home. Psychologically, that was, I guess, better. It just sort of made me feel a little bit more comfortable with the fact that knowing that someone was around me, or a family member was around me full time, even though I wouldn't wake them up at all hours in the morning whilst I was awake. It was just good knowing that someone was in the home with me, that I could wake up if need be. Going on to week 2, it was pretty much of a muchness. I did have the instruction from the surgeon to try and start introducing walks. And when I say introducing walks, he said just don't overdo it. It's just a matter of, set a little goal. It could be 5 meters, and tomorrow, 6 meters, the day after 7 meters, very, very small increments. And yes, it was that short for me. I would literally get 4 or 5 meters and be absolutely exhausted. And I was still very, very scared, to be honest with you. I'd feel sensations in my lower back. I'd feel compression in the nerve when I was walking, and I was just like, oh, this is not good. I need to get off my feet. I need to lay back down. So it was a combination of things. Week 2 for me was still really, really, really tough. I still needed extreme amounts of medication. So essentially the aim was to start reducing the dose week 2. In my case, I wasn't able to fulfill that. So I spoke to the surgeon, obviously, and spoke to the doctor, my GP, and everyone. Everyone obviously had said, no, that's fine, that's okay. We can maintain the week 1's dosage. Obviously, in a perfect world, we'd prefer that you started to reduce the amount of intake if possible. But if you're suffering such acute pain, there's no need putting yourself through extra trauma, because the more trauma you have, the more inflammation you have, and it's worse for you in so many ways. So we maintained the high dose. Week 2, I remember that specifically. I was quite eager to start reducing that myself, but I just couldn't. I had to maintain a high dose. So again, that was something that I couldn't pick up on any previous videos, and it was a little bit disheartening, thinking, well, now I'm in week 2 and I'm still feeling sharp pain, and I'm still in agony, and I'm still getting to a 10 out of 10 in pain, which I honestly believed at that point. I was pretty much, at that point, I would say would be my absolute worst. After second week out post-op, I was really optimistic, thinking, okay, give yourself that first week, all these videos, everyone looking good and happy and smiling, and everyone's telling me, no, like it's going to be okay. And it wasn't getting okay. I was completely and utterly convinced that the operation had been unsuccessful, and that the herniation at the front of the disc, or the attempt to clean that, was definitely unsuccessful. The pain was still, as I said, I was getting to 10 out of 10 pain. The medication couldn't reduce. No improvements in sleep, no improvements in walking, no improvements in endurance, nothing. I literally couldn't measure any improvements, bar the fact that I was given an instruction that I was able to stand up more, and like that wouldn't cause any more further harm. Apart from that, there was nothing measurable for me. So that was extremely frustrating. So as I said, from post-op to week 2 was much of a muchness. I just wanted to put out, as I said, my perspective, only because I wasn't able to find anyone to relate to, and everybody, as I said, was up and about and smiling and happy, and I was far from that. I was quite depressed and miserable, and felt horrible, absolutely horrible. Felt like everything was falling to bits, was convinced I wasn't going to get better. Constantly, I mean, not in front of everybody, but when everybody, I guess, went to bed and I was alone, I'd sort of let my emotions out and probably just sit there for a couple of hours, I guess feeling sorry for myself and crying, which felt good. It sort of gave me a bit of relief, but ultimately at the end of the day, we'll leave it there, because that's all I want to input is that's how my personal experience was. But moving forward, weeks 3 to 4 have been so much better. And in the next video, I'll touch on week 3, and then essentially it was like almost like a flick the switch to week 4. It's getting better and better each day, and I'm so much more positive. But again, we'll touch on that in the next video. This is more specific to post-op operation to week 2. And just letting people know my circumstance, that what I wasn't okay, and my personal experiences, and hope this helps somebody out there. Thanks, cheers.